Okay, now a neat study was done by Zoetis and AgStar where they looked at what are the 6 main factors that distinguished high profit-making herds from low profit-making herds. And they identified these 6 parameters. All right. First was the difference in energy-corrected milk. And so when you think about it, yeah, that makes more sense. Let's use energy-corrected milk because what? It's going to have the volume of milk, it's going to have the fat and protein content on an energy basis. So it amalgamates the component issue. And so they found that that was critical. Pregnancy rate was also critical. All right. How quick are these cows getting pregnant? Again, because we want them to enter those higher phases, those higher lactation numbers where they make more milk as we go out in lactation. Somatic cell count, so what type of impact both on milk production as well as milk prices, right? Somatic cell count is going to influence what type of benefits we might get. And then culling, death loss, heifer survival, and then also they had what was net herd replacement cost per hundredweight. So this looks at what is the cost of your replacement as a function divided by the milk produced. And so they found that that was a big delimiter in terms of these one of these 6 drivers. And so to facilitate this, what we've done is we've created, first of all, if you look at the focus of these top ones are focused on the milking herd. Here you're focused on the heifer. And of course, we have others that are focused on both. So this analytic looks at all these 6 and allows you to go in and adjust based on your given herd what the parameters are. So if I click on details, I can change what my current milk is versus what my goal might be and see what that impact is on profit per cow per year. Okay, and down here you can see what it looks at in terms of feed efficiency and all the other things that are driven by that parameter. Or we might select a pregnancy rate. So in the background we have a reproductive model, so you can enter in 2 different pregnancy rate levels and see what impact that's going to have on profit per cow per year. And similarly down here on the net herd replacement. So this analytic is up there that allows you to kind of look at, gee, what's the opportunity for my herd depending on what parameters you enter in. Okay. Now, given the interest in feeding animals, I think you invariably have to have a keen interest in forage quality. One of the key things that we've always been pushing at New Bolton Center, we have a long history and legacy of interest in nutrition, and we recognized right away that forage quality was a big driver. And so this is looking at some historical data of the trends that have occurred in the industry over time. And you can see that here we're seeing the NEL go up over time. We can look at other parameters. We can look at starch levels. You can put in all different parameters and see how have these changed over time with the industry. And when you look at that energy value change, if there's 20 pounds of dry matter corn silage with NEL milk of 0.3 per pound, you're looking at about almost 2.7, 3 pounds of milk just from the changes in the historic quality of forage that we've seen over time. So very important. Some of the key, here we look at starch changes. So we can see that there's been a continual improvement in starch level. This program allows you to put in your values and to then look at what percent you are of the database. So in other words, depending on what my starch is, it'll tell me what percentile of herds had a higher value in that year compared to mine. So it's a nice way to look at, gee, how is my forage quality comparing to others on a nutrient basis. And we just see our good herds continually improving in forage quality. Now, an issue that comes up quite a bit is, okay, Dave, you've told us to feed that cow more and more feed. We want that cow to eat as much feed as possible. What happens when a cow eats more feed? What's going to happen? We're going to have a higher passage rate through that animal, right? And so that feed doesn't stay in the digestive tract as long as it does at a lower intake, okay? And so what happens is, as we increase the intake, we extract fewer and fewer nutrients. Okay, and this is the whole basis of the CPM model, was this concept of that, hey, we just don't feed a set amount, that there's this issue of passage rate. And so what this model does is this looks at multiple intakes of maintenance. Okay, and so we have at maintenance 1, maintenance 2, in terms of energy intake. So multiple intakes of energy. And what you see here is your impact on your net energy ultimately per pound of feed. Okay, this is using a digestibility discount of 6%. Okay, here you can see you can adjust this to whatever level you might. But what you're effectively saying is that as that cow eats more and more feed, the effective energy that's available to the cow gets reduced. Okay? Now, so that's kind of the biology. All right, what I'm interested in is the economics. Okay? So in other words, is it still profitable? Is it still profitable for me to feed that? And what we see is that, gee, yeah, as we go up multiples of maintenance, and yeah, that digestibility is getting more and more of the actual nutrients are flowing through the cow. It's still profitable even at these extreme intakes. So I sleep very well at night, making the general recommendation that, hey, get your cows to eat more feed. Okay, I'm not so worried about even the price of the feed. Okay, that would be another new, but just get them to eat more feed. All right, because even at these very high levels of intake where this digestibility factor is coming into play, it's still profitable. All right, so if there's one thing you walk away with, it would be that message that, boy, get as much intake. Okay, I think I might, how am I doing time-wise? 10 more minutes? Okay. Well, I want to just, I'm going to just a couple more slides here. Just to reiterate, when you're looking at milking feed costs, this looks at feed costs per a 40 kilogram cow. The key thing you want to do is partition feed cost into what goes into milk versus maintenance. This is probably the most common mistake I see in economic models. So here, if I look at feed costs, let's say it's costing $80 to feed this 40 kilogram cow. We can calculate an average feed cost per kilogram of production. It'll be about 20 cents per kilogram of milk. All right, that's your average feed cost. Now, if someone comes in with, hey, we want to put fans in, or we want to put sand bedding, and we think the cow's going to make 3 or 4 more pounds of milk, the issue you have in your mind, well, gee, what's going to be the associated feed cost with this new investment? All right, well, many people will turn to this average feed cost, and that's the wrong number to use. And it's the wrong number to use because it has the feed maintenance component in it. And so what we like to do is look at what we call the marginal feed cost. And so the marginal feed cost is where we just look at what feed got partitioned into milk, what feed went into the maintenance of the cow. And we can easily do this by knowing what's the body weight of the cow. And so we know how many mCals of energy are required to feed that cow for maintenance. And then the rest is going into milk production. So we can partition the cost based on those parameters. And you can see now our marginal cost of making that other pound of milk has dropped down. And so that's, so what will happen is this will open up the opportunity to make more investments, to go after more things when you realize that, hey, the true marginal cost of feeding that cow for that additional kilogram of milk is a lot less than the average. All right, so, and we have an analytic that works all through this. For the sake of time, I think Joe has some examples of where we actually field implemented it. So this is on our website. You can see here partitioning the feed into maintenance versus going into milk. And this has all sorts of, where you can look at different uses of products and what have you and build in what their responses are. Okay, the other thing I just wanted to focus on very briefly is the concept of heifer rearing. Okay, you need a certain heifer herd size to match your milking herd. In other words, every year you have culls going out the door, and you want to make sure that your heifer flow is sufficient so that you always have your stalls filled. The worst situation is where you have empty stalls in a milking barn, because you're paying all those costs without a cow, and all those other fixed costs. And so you want to really make sure you always have sufficient heifers. and you want to make sure you're not rearing too many. And of course, it will have heifer losses, so we have to rear a larger population. Also, if the age at first calving is extended, we have to expand our heifer herd size. So in other words, the heifer herd size to maintain a certain milking herd is a function of all of these parameters: age at first calving, heifer loss. And if we can be efficient at these, we can reduce the carrying needs of the heifer herd to meet the milking herd needs. And so this is a very, very important area, and it's why it was one of those 6 factors in the profit determining items across the different herds. So the issue of how many, how to raise, who to raise, are all issues that we face. So how many do we raise, and what's it cost to rear them? And so we have an analytic that lets us look at this, of where we can put in what the herd cull rate is. So here at 500 cows, 33% cull rate. We need 165 animals flowing into the herd every year to match the cows that are leaving. If I have a herd saw age at 22 months versus 26 months, if I'm at 26 months, I need 358 heifers, all right, versus if I'm at 22 months, I only need 303. All right, same milk's coming out of these herds, all right, but you're having to rear a vastly greater number, and that increases your cost of replacement per hundredweight and what have you. Very, very, so this is an area we can do stuff. We know how to reduce that age at first calving very, very easily. It's feeding and repro and what have you. And then the other element that, and this will be the last slide that I have, is the concept of risk control. In other words, you rear a certain number of heifers to meet a certain culling rate, but then you might want to rear a few more as a risk insurance so that you make sure that you're 95% confident that you never have an empty stall. And so for this case, for a 100 cow herd, if I wanted to make sure that I always have sufficient animals to meet, in other words, I don't want to be 50% right of having a full barn. I want to be 90% right. And so I'm going to rear additional animals. And so if I rear an additional 10 animals, I'm going to be 99% confident that I'm always going to have sufficient heifers. Now that's going to cost me money, right? I'm going to have to rear actually 17% more animals than expected, okay? And of course, if we go to a larger herd, let's go to a larger herd, let's say we'll go right up to 1,000 cows. To get that same 99%, okay, I need to rear around 41 animals, and yet I'm only increasing by 7%. So in other words, their insurance cost is less, and that's part of the benefit of scale, okay? So there's some interesting concepts in heifer rearing and heifer management that, first of all, just make sure that you've got the right login. So this is the web page you can go to, dairydashboards.org, login, guest, password guest, and if you're on an iPhone or iPad, you need a flash player. You can buy it for $4, a flash player. But this will get you into all of the analytical tools, and I think there's about 60 of them out there. It's out there and doesn't cost you anything. So key dominant factors are: one, high milk production through high dry matter intakes. Number one important cost on the dairy, and we want to reduce maintenance costs. We want more of those nutrients going into milk. High forage quality, very critical. When you think about it, yeah, it drives milk, but also high yield reduces my assets per cow. All right, so when I get more tonnage off of that field of quality feeds, I'm supporting more cows, and so my asset efficiency is going to go up. All right, and we want to manage feed prices. You want the herd at maximal capacity at all times. High repro efficiency is very critical, as well as high quality milk and replacement management, very important. And so sand bedding, parlor efficiency, very, very critical. Okay, so understand the biology, all right, and understand the management factors that can impact the bottom line, and constantly evaluate emerging strategies. And so that'll be it. I just want to end on one slide because I think I want you to be aware of, we're all in food production, and we're in a fortunate country in that we get a full meal every day, but most of the world doesn't. There's a lot of people that live on $1 per day. And Bill Gates is very interested in having an impact on these poor populations. And he's said some interesting things. If you care about the poor, you should care about agriculture. And if you care about agriculture, you should care about livestock. Okay, and so what that means in the context is helping the poor farmer is get as much possible out of their animals as possible. So here, Bill Gates recognizes these very fundamental principles, okay, and is trying to bring this to some of the poor producers that we see throughout the world. So I'm going to end on that. So you guys are in a great industry, and if there are any questions, I'd be glad to answer them. But by all means, visit the web page, and if you have questions, shoot me an email or give me a call, and be more than glad to go over it with you. Okay? Thank you.
A couple questions from the audience.
Yeah.
What's your youngest recommended calving age for Holsteins?
Well, we typically see.
They say younger, but they never say an age.
Yeah, well, I feel very comfortable at 22 months. Okay, we have herds that are averaging 22 months age at first calving and very successful. Okay.
What do you recommend?
When you have a mean of 22 months, right, you're going to have a curve around that. So we'll have some animals at 21 months. Some, I don't like to go below 20. Okay, now the beef will get down to, but so you wouldn't want that to be. Part of the thing is, first of all, manage the mean, and then you manage the variation around it. And so typically if you look at the distribution of age at first calving, there'll be a big peak and then there'll be a tail. And the tail are the heifers that, how many breedings do you allow them to go? Do you let them go 5 breedings, 6 breedings before you cull them? Okay, you're typically, you don't want to go too many. She's telling you something if she doesn't get pregnant right away. And she just becomes a repro problem downstream. But we might, age at first calving is very much a function of weight gain and, prepubertal weight gain, which is a function as a percentage of body weight. Heifers start cycling at about 42% of their adult weight. So it's not age dependent, it's weight dependent. Okay, yeah. Any other questions? Or? Yeah.
Financial question. On that efficiency, do you have like a benchmark that how efficient an operation should be?
Well, the thing is, you want to, when you look at efficiency, there's the overall aggregate efficiencies are going to be return on assets, return on equity. They're long term. Then you have more tactical. So what's your milk yield? What's your age at first calving? What's your pregnancy rate? And so what I look at are those 6 drivers. Okay, with how somatic cell counts, can we get them below 150? Can we, so I think what you want to do is identify, and when you get all of those little facets together right, return on equity and return on assets are going to be fine. So you can't really manage those, you manage the tactical. So age at first calving, you're going to manage it by what's my weight gain, my prepubertal, postpubertal weight gain in my heifers. And then what's my breeding program? Then I observe the age at first calving, but you're actually managing the daily gain and the repro, and you have to do that for each of these. And of course, the big driver is forage quality and its impact on milk. I mean, I think you guys you've experienced it, you know it, and we need continual. That starts at selecting the right crops, harvesting them properly, storing them properly. So there's a whole gamut. Okay. All right, well, thank you very much.
And I really appreciate that last piece on forage quality, Dr. Galligan. What a great